So recently, because Argent suggested, I watched The Resolution and The Endless, which are two movies that came out in the 2010s. The Resolution is the first movie, which is 2012, and The Endless is 2017, the second movie, which is essentially a sequel. It takes place in the same universe, but it's not a direct sequel to The Resolution. Both these movies, I would say, are micro budget horror movies, and they both cover cosmic horror. The first movie details Detox and two friends, which one basically kidnaps the other friend and forces him through handcuffing him to a radiator over the course of a week to detox off of crack. Because in the resolution, the Chris character, he ran off and started squatting on an abandoned house in an Indian reservation. So Michael comes and tries to save him by forcibly putting him into cold turkey detox off crack, which doesn't work very well. So anyway, the movie is very, very micro budget, and the thing with micro budget stuff is that sometimes that helps it a lot because you get this huge sense of realism when you have a micro budget because everything is in a real location. And it's pretty transparent in these movies that everything really is in a real location. Now, I think that helps a lot more for the resolution and hinders it a lot more for the endless. And that's because the resolution is a very, very small story. It's essentially a story about two guys, right? And they're being surrounded by this unknown house that they're squatting in, and all these mysterious things are happening to them. They're uncovering videotapes and photography and 8mm rolls of film that are like alternate versions of how they could die, and they're very perplexed by this, and then the movie ends on a very strange cliffhanger. But what helps it is because it's just two guys that are really basically like doing this stagey naturalistic acting. And as somebody that sees a lot of horror movies and becomes accustomed to appreciating micro budgets, I can dig this movie. I'm not going to expect was it the 1982 thing, or I'm not going to expect The Shining out of it. I'm expecting a micro budget, and I'm expecting them to put their heart into it, and with this movie I got it. The problem is that when you go to the sequel, The Endless, it's a much bigger concept of a movie, but it didn't gain a large enough budget. It's not that much bigger in terms of what they can show effects wise than the first movie, and there's many more characters in this. So, what you're expecting to see at times is some pretty explicit gore or some explicit special effects and so on and so forth. But the camera always cuts away in this, and it becomes very annoying, and it becomes apparent that you're watching a micro-budget movie that bit off much more than it can chew. So I found The Endless rather lacking in comparison to The Resolution, because The Resolution was much more upfront and it had heart about its micro budget, and this, The Endless, is just too ambitious for the size of budget it has. It's the negative side of having a micro budget production, where they're trying to do something that's much bigger. Now, the idea of both movies is essentially that there's this interdimensional being which sticks you into a time loop, and this is more revealed in The Endless. The first one, The Resolution, is very, very open-ended. The Endless is very explicit, and I feel that The Endless hurts itself more being that way, but there's this interdimensional, by the way, invisible, so you never get to see any special effects of it, being which is getting these people stuck in these time loops and forcing them to kill themselves in alternate ways indefinitely for, I think at one point there was a 19th century person who was stuck in a time loop. So possibly hundreds, if not thousands of years. So there's these two brothers that are traveling back into this cult, and this cult has willingly accepted becoming stuck in this time loop because it's a quasi-divine being, right? This invisible entity which is sticking people in a time loop for essentially what you would assume is its own amusement, and you'd get to live forever. So you can see how a cult would base itself around it. But because of how ambitious this movie is, the micro budget, I think, hinders it a lot more. And you want to see stuff like, you want to see this interdimensional being, and you want it to be cool, and you want it to show special effects, but it doesn't. So it's always this invisible thing that's cutting away. And you'll see, like, somebody's going to die this really violent death. Cut away. Somebody's going to die a really violent death, and you want gore because you're a horror fan, and it cuts away. And it just, you're getting, you're getting much less than you think you would have paid for. And that's a problem. That movie is way too ambitious, The Endless. You know, and it could be that I just wanted to go to bed by the time I started watching The Endless. I was tired. I started getting really tired halfway through it. And maybe it's a mood thing. Maybe I'll see it again and I'll like it more. But generally, I'd say the resolution has more heart than The Endless, and it doesn't trip over being too ambitious. But for a normal movie fan, I wouldn't suggest either of these. You'd have to be a pretty hardened horror fan that's able to accept the shortcomings of and really appreciate basically it being one step above a home movie, these movies. You really got to appreciate a micro-budget movie to even want to watch something like this. You're not going to like it if you just like normie movies. So, for hardcore horror fans, I would say, especially if you're interested in cosmic horror and micro-budget movies, give this a shot. If you're just a normal fan or a casual horror fan, don't even try.